Bathsheba, there's someone at the door.
Hi, who are you?
My name's Yankee Jim. I'm here for the ghost party.
Okay, sorry, Yankee Jim? Who do you know here?
Well, I don't really know anyone here. I just, I'm a ghost.
Do you have any bottles? Doesn't even look like you have bottles.
I didn't realize it's a BYOB sort of thing. I could go to the Walgreens.
Yeah, it's a BYOB thing. I don't even think you know anyone here.
Well, I just, I'm a ghost, so ghost party is like, yeah.
Are you Greek? Who did you even rush? Because over here, we rush infanticide, murder, suicide.
I rushed a little frat in California called the Boat Thieves, where we sort of stole boats.
Oh my god, gross. We only allow IMS people here, so get the fuck out.
Who is that at the door?
Just some nobody from fucking Boat Thieves stabbed me with a knitting needle. I'm Spooky Maddie, and you're totally listening to Anomalous.
Welcome back, everybody. Today's the day that we become a real podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the first part of our very first Dose-parter.
Dose-sharter.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm Spooky Maddie here with Just Cullen, and you are listening to Anomalous, where we talk about everything that goes bump in the night. Today, as Just Cullen alluded to by just exactly saying, we are presenting our first two-parter, and it is going to be about the Perron family haunting, the true story behind the Conjuring movie.
You gotta get up there in the results of Google.
Oh my god. Well, a few announcements before we really get into it. One, turns out, for those who tuned into the Mandela Effect, if you didn't, fake fan.
Or you're new to the show.
Scum. Turns out Fruit Loops is F-R-O-O-T. Yeah. I have no idea what that means.
If anything, it just reinforces the whole Mandela Effect thing.
Yeah, you know what? Nothing means anything in this goddamn world, so. And so Larry King recently died, and my mom thinks it's a Mandela Effect because she thought Larry King was already dead, so.
Nah, he's been alive. He's been making shows this whole time.
Well, now he's dead.
Yes, rest in peace. I think, did she just assume he was dead when he stopped doing his late show?
Maybe. And he's also someone who, looked very old, I think, for a while.
He's been old for a long time. He's been old since, the 80s.
Yeah, so that kind of makes sense. But, maybe it's a Mandela Effect. Another update. I recently read a book called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and it has to do with kind of quantum immortality. This girl is in between life and death and has the ability to look at every single path she could have taken. So if that intrigues you, highly recommend. Also, currently reading Black Sun by Rebecca Rowanhorse. Highly recommend. She's an Indigenous author, and send her your support.
Very cool recommendations. I guarantee you that I will not read them because I cannot read.
He does not know how to read.
I don't know how to read. But weirdly, I know how to write.
He wrote our script. Actually, I helped this time.
Yep.
A little bit.
The solid amount.
I'll get too anxious.
If you ever hear something that is pro the Warrens, that she wrote that part.
Oh my god. Today, we will be talking about the Perron family haunting.
It's not. You can't take back people saying La Llorona poorly by mispronouncing the Perron family.
Justice for La Llorona.
She's a child killer.
Okay, here's my thing. All white people are like, what is that? La Llorone? And so I'm taking it back by Spanishizing the Perron name by saying Perron.
Nice.
So today we are talking about the Perron family who inspired The Conjuring. Woo-hoo.
Woo-woo.
Woo-hoo. Very exciting, very big case. I'm sure a lot of you have seen The Conjuring. I don't know. Am I allowed to assume that?
I have not.
Yeah, that's whack. I love horror movies, and I personally I love the Conjuring universe. I mean, out of all the modern day horror directors, James Wan hits it. He's no like Robert Eggers or Ari Aster, but for like big budget, digestible horror movies, James Wan hitting it. Cannot recommend the Conjuring movies enough. Insidious, he did Saw.
Do you want a Blumhouse movie that's 20% better? He's got your back.
Oh, yeah. La Llorona, that was a miss, but I have high standards for my La Llorona.
It wasn't even
lore.
a close miss. It missed by a good margin.
I did like The Nun, though. I actually really like that movie. And actually, I think Conjuring 2 is even scarier than the original Conjuring. I love Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. They're my top 5 actors of all time.
I feel like you started that list with them in mind, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So highly recommend as a little companion watch to our podcast. You know, you could get the story from our podcast first.
And honestly, at that point, you don't even need to watch the movies because we're being more truthful and more dramatic.
Are we being more dramatic?
Let's jump right in.
All right. Many people, me among them, would never consider spending even one night in a haunted house. All it takes is one tragic, sudden death to make a home totally uninhabitable. Yet, the Perron family, a middle-class couple and their 5 daughters, lived in a haunted house for nearly a decade, among tens of spirits. This is the story of how that family fought to survive in a home filled with angry, violent visitors from the afterlife.
10 years is a very long time. I've only ever done 2 things for 10 years. I was a kid for 10 years, and I've been depressed for 10 years.
Oh, yeah. I don't know, but I feel like, you know, human resilience, you can get used to anything. And just like, oh, that's just my homie, old Yankee Jim.
That's just my mom being pinned to the ceiling by a phantom that I cannot see.
If it happened enough, you would get used to it.
You think she's, like, good at doing her makeup up there?
Yeah, she's like, this again, good thing I have my to-go liner.
Roger, can you pass me the paper? I'd really like to see where my positions are at today.
Just like we get used to this capitalistic society.
Just like we get used to this. Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts, please sponsor us.
We never get used to Dunkin' Donuts.
Because it keeps on surpassing itself. Yeah.
That flavor slaps every time. Dunkin', please. Please.
It would take you, at this point, 4 months to just break even because we've given you so much money.
We have given them a lot of money. Yeah, so the Perron family lived in this haunted ass house for a decade. And as we go through the story, you'll see there were some very intense moments.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the family. First, it started with the couple, Roger and Carolyn, who were strikingly normal white couple in the 1960s.
I mean, their name's Roger and Carolyn.
Yeah, and they're just living deep in Connecticut. And while they were in Connecticut, they ended up having their 5 daughters, which off the top of my head were,
The 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cynthia, and April. So, huge family that began under Roger and Carolyn. Their little house in Connecticut was not enough for their growing family. They needed more space and to expand. So that brought them to Rhode Island, specifically in the mild suburbs around Providence. So the family did not take to the suburbs of Rhode Island very well.
Just a little bit too much of a wild crowd there in the mild suburbs around Providence, Rhode Island.
Damn.
I don't want to claim white flight, but
God.
I'm gonna.
We don't take to our suburbs well for the opposite reason. Although I was scared of that guy who was just walking in the neighborhood.
He was white, though.
True.
So that's good.
So.
But he was wearing all black, so maybe you need to reconsider that prejudice for people that wear black.
There's this weird-ass kid that lives in our neighborhood, and he scares me.
He's clearly a black-eyed child.
He's a weird kid. I have a reason. He came up to me when I was, like, getting in my car.
He's not like most of the kids you hate where you have no reason to hate them at all. You just naturally do.
Yeah. He came up to me when I was getting in my car and tried to get me to go in his house to make a lifelong friend. It's so unclear to me whether he was the lifelong friend or he like made some sort of like spiritual being out of clay for me to be lifelong friends with.
There's really no good scenario where a stranger walks up and asks if you want a lifelong friend.
Yeah.
It really only would happen like what happened to you, which I hope isn't a regular occurrence, or when like a 24-year-old in a frat is trying to get you to pay $5,000 to make friends.
Damn. Yeah, and then shortly after, didn't he come to our door and was like, will you buy my Pokemon toys? I swear to God, he was trying to steal our mail the other day. I'm just saying.
Okay, that's baseless. You just had a feeling. You didn't look outside.
Well, me and the Perron family feel the same way about the suburbs. Andrea said that they found the suburbs disquieting. So the family moved out into the countryside.
You do want to go raise goats and stuff.
Yeah, but not in a haunted-ass house.
Well, no one is like, well, I guess we have in the
we
past.
have said that
That
we want to move into a haunted house. Exactly. So in 1971, the Perron family moved into the Arnold estate, a 14-room farmhouse. The estate was massive and historic. The 200-acre plot was established in 1680, and the farmhouse completed in 1736. And a lot of sources will say, like, the Arnold family had lived there for 8 generations.
Yeah, and we'll get a lot more history about them. This brings up a question that we really had for ourselves while we were writing for this episode. Clearly, this house and its land are way too old to live in and like feel comfortable. But what is your personal cutoff for how old of a house you're willing to settle in?
Yeah, I think mine is like 1950.
That's really not long. It's 70 years. The person who made that house could still be around.
I get scared in our house that was built in like 2015, and Colin's like, what fucking ghosts?
What ghost could have possibly inhabited this place in the last few years?
Okay, our house really do be settling a lot,
Oh my
though.
God.
So loudly, it's scary.
Yeah. Our kids are going to be so terrified because every time they hear something like shift in the house, they're going to go, oh my God, Dad, what was that? And I'll go, oh, it's just the house settling. You know, it moves when it heats up and cools down because that's how materials are. And then you'll lean right into their ear and go, or is it?
Yeah, my kid will be like, can you check the closet for a ghost? I'll be like, no fucking way, you think I want to get attacked?
Good luck in here. Flick the light off.
You know, actually, in the same vein as that, before the family moved into the Arnold estate, the usually warm previous owner, Earl Kenyon, reportedly gave them a piece of stern advice. Quote, leave the lights on at night, end quote. I have also heard this quote attributed to their neighbors.
This is the first sign of many really, really early on that they should have just instantly moved out. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, and it's confusing to me, and I know all of this should go in the second episode where we break down all the facts, but why did they stay there for 10 years?
I mean, it's hard to move if you just bought like a 14-room estate. That's why I'm glad we'll be like well off enough that if we get a haunted house, we could probably move quickly.
I just know that if we move into a house and they're just like, hey, be careful around the attic, before they can explain the fact that, like, it's low and you might hit your head, you'll have already arsoned the house.
Oh, yeah.
Out of fear that it's inhabited by ghosts.
Mm-hmm. And actually, in Rhode Island, they do not have to disclose whether a house is haunted.
Of course they don't. That's the same thing as, like, having to disclose how many mirrors were broken in the house the year before. Or, like, if there were black cats in the neighborhood.
What they are saying, they don't have to disclose whether any, like, violent events or reports of paranormal activity happened.
I know some states say that they have to report if there's murders, and I get that, and there's kind of a practical reason for that. It could be argued. But for a ghost, how would you even, like, confirm that in order to tell a resident?
Okay, if you're a real estate agent and you're past, like, the person who's selling the house is like, why are you moving out? It's like, oh, that house is haunted as fuck. And by the way, you know I'm gonna ask if it's an older house.
Yeah. Like how you bother the people in oddity shops every time we go and it's like, is anything in here haunted?
Oh yeah, I'm an oddities collector and I ask the fucking person. First of all, most importantly, is it ethically sourced? Make sure all your bones, all your crystals are ethically sourced.
This is to our target audience. You guys need to hear this.
But then I ask if anything has been haunted or cursed.
And then one time we were in a shop when we went to Denver and the lady was like, oh yeah, we had a stuffed monkey in a cowboy hat. that was in here, and he had bad juju, and it's just, I'm like choking down laughter in the background as I just see Maddie and the woman who's running the shop wide-eyed staring at each other, like freaked out by the idea of this cowboy monkey.
That's terrifying. She was like, yeah, the only thing that has given me bad vibes was this monkey in a cowboy hat we got.
Objectively funny.
Scary as hell. So, from the moment the Perron family received this mysterious warning, the house would immediately begin earning its infamous reputation.
According to Andrea, who's the eldest daughter and would later go on to write a trilogy of books about the house, and I guess her life in general, called House of Darkness, House of Light. Anyway, she would say that when they were moving in, her and all of her sisters, they all noticed a guy in the house that they assumed was helping them move in and helping like the guy who was selling the house. And then they asked their mom, and she was like, I didn't think that there was anyone else here. And then no one else could find him. Or possibly he vanished in front of some of the younger sisters.
Yeah, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of the paranormal experiences that the Perron family lived throughout their time in the house, and prepare for full-body chills. It's gonna get scary.
If you want full-body chills as bad or worse than the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, strap into this episode.
Oh my god. You can either pour an ice bucket on your head or listen to the details of this haunting.
And this way you don't have to donate to the ALS Foundation, you just have to donate to us.
Donate to us.
Donate to me.
Our PayPal.
Donate to me, Cullen.
No. The parents said that they began experiencing strange phenomena almost as soon as they moved in. In the beginning, Carolyn Perron noticed objects seemed to disappear or move when no one was looking. She would hear odd sounds throughout the home and find neat piles of dirt placed in the center of freshly cleaned floors. The girls would report their toys going missing as well and being found in odd places such as under their beds.
From the very beginning, it seemed like the spirits of the house were particularly interested in Carolyn, the mother.
Yeah.
They did interact with and were seen or perceived by the 5 daughters pretty consistently. But as we continue forward, and to remember through both episodes, Carolyn was really the foci, it seemed like, of this haunting, which is somewhat strange because with other big hauntings, like the Enfield case, which of course we'll cover at some point, it seems like it's usually the daughter.
Yeah.
One of the daughters, and like fits with a lot of those theories, the daughters were all like, I think the eldest was 12 years old and then going all the way down, which is a pretty typical time for a haunting to start.
The girls were definitely sensitive to the spirits and they saw a lot of activity. But it does seem like if there were any malevolent spirits in the house, they targeted Carolyn. And that is really interesting to me. I'm obsessed with ghost stories, like since I was a wee child. A wee child.
Since you were peeing the bed a few months ago.
I didn't pee the bed a few months ago. Tell them I didn't.
You pooped the bed a few months ago.
I didn't! So I believe that children are more sensitive to paranormal activity. They're closer to whatever comes before and after life. And it really is common if there is some sort of malevolent spirit or some sort of demonic spirit, it really tends to go towards the children. So this is very interesting that the kids weren't targeted. It was really the mom.
It was more so, yeah, Carolyn, the mom.
Yeah, and that could have to do with why they were able to stay there that long. I know Andrea, who talks extensively, wrote the books, said that, it was fine. Like, these things happened, but it wasn't like anything ever, like, attacked her or anything.
Right. And they did say that they were terrified, but I don't know if any of the kids were ever attacked, like physically interacted with.
Yeah, you'll see as the haunting gets worse and hits its climax, the girls were terrified. But it seems like they mostly were aware, like, it seems like most of these spirits are benevolent.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing in the beginning.
So like we just said, the 5 Perron girls started to notice spirits pretty much from when they first entered the house. from the start, they were kind of aware, and like I said, children are, I feel, more open to it.
They're easier to scare, I'll tell you that.
Oh my god. So it was pretty clear to them that the house was haunted by multiple distinct spirits. At first, the family's paranormal interactions were just harmless, and it would stay true that most of the spirits in the home they felt were benevolent. Cynthia said, one of the daughters, said that for the first 2 months in the house, there was a woman who would kiss her on the forehead every night. And, you know, at some point during the first 2 months, she's like, that's not my mother.
Yeah, start to figure that out.
Yeah, and kind of looking forward into the story, a lot of people are like, why did you stay at a haunted ass house for a decade?
It was for the kisses on the forehead.
Yes. You know, the family always stands by saying many of the spirits were benevolent. They were harmless. And, you know, even me, who's pretty scared of ghosts, I think if it was like a harmless spirit and you didn't see any escalation, I'd be probably fine with it.
I would love to live in a house with like just a regular ghost that I can like tell to pick stuff up every once in a while, and he just like hangs out and turns the TV on.
Oh my god.
Like, that'd be sick. First of all, I'd get more out of the Netflix subscription I'm paying for. But also, I don't really understand the entire, like, the house was benevolent, most of the spirits, so they were fine with it. Because I've lived in a house with a couple roommates. Even if I were to live in a house with 30 roommates and like 28 of them were cool, but 2 of them every once in a while would show up and punch me in the back of the head while I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm gonna move out. I'm gonna move out and I'm gonna tell people I had a shitty time in the house.
Oddly specific. That's the thing that I was gonna say. If it was just like one benevolent spirit, I would be fine living there. But the problem is, if there's something letting in benevolent spirits, if there's like some sort of energy or portal, something bad is probably gonna come out at some point.
Yeah, I had a great time living in the house. Jeremy was cool. Kyle was nice. Max was always like on time with rent. He was really cool to me. We hung out. We played some video games. But then James would come in and he gave me a people's elbow, so I moved out instantly.
Would you move out instantly, though?
If someone were to show up and deliver from the top rope of the dining table, a people's elbow to my back, yeah, I'm moving out.
I don't know if you would move out instantly.
I want to say publicly, and I don't care if this makes me a pussy or whatever, I can't handle what The Rock is cooking.
Oh my god. Very fun.
Is that the same? Can you smell that?
Smell what the... Wait. Do you like what The Rock is cooking?
Can you taste what The Rock is cooking?
Taste what The Rock is cooking? Or is it smell?
Is the smell of what The Rock is cooking aromatic enough for you?
Do you like that?
Do you
the
like
spice combo?
How much would you pay at a 5-star restaurant for what The Rock is cooking?
Going back to ghosts. I've seen many ghost stories where even if there is a malevolent spirit coming through, they feel comforted by the benevolent spirits that are there. And I think that was the case for Mr. Gordy and the haunting in Georgia, which we'll definitely cover. I don't know. It's hard to just move out. I mean, you would talk to Jeremy. I mean, it's hurtful that he gave you the elbow from the top row, but you wouldn't just pick up everything and move out.
Jeremy was cool, actually. When his cheese sticks expired, he gave me half of the pack and we just finished it off that day. James was the one that delivered the people elbow right to the top of my forehead.
Okay. You would talk it out with James, though.
I wouldn't, because I'd be unconscious.
Or you and all your other good roommates gang up against him.
You cannot negotiate with a person whose first resort is a people's elbow. There's no wiggle room in there where they're willing to talk it out.
It's hard moving places. That fucking sucks.
It's difficult to move and it does suck. And I assume, not to steal a leaf out of Kevin James's book, but how much luggage is there going to be with a wife and 5 daughters?
Oh my god. I would feed you to the malevolent James. So, going on with their positive, not negative experiences with the multiple spirits in the house, April Perron, the youngest daughter, was actually friends with a spirit named Oliver Richardson who lived in her closet.
Yeah, some reports say that when later on, investigators, the Warrens, but we'll get into that, show up to look into the house and alleviate some of the more negative spirits, she would actually hide the fact that she had that friend from them out of fear that he would disappear or they'd somehow make him leave.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's clear that these girls are having an all right time, and it's also clear to see why they are sure there are multiple spirits. It's to the point where, like, this youngest daughter is kind of interacting with the spirit, got his name. It's probably not that, like, little boy kissing the other daughter on the head.
Yeah, from the start, they notice that there are a lot of really distinct spirits. There's a lot of different entities that are continuous and like unique. They're not just mashed where it's one spirit showing up as this or that. There's the friend in the closet. There is the motherly figure who would kiss one of their foreheads in bed every night. There was a father, son, and dog that would just sort of hang out at the top of the stairs and look at a wall all day.
Yeah, you could see already why this house is garnering such a reputation for being extremely haunted. I mean, these are multiple spirits that are making themselves very clear to these girls. Like I said, though, the fear is, if there's something going on this property that is attracting otherworldly spirits, the fear becomes if it attracts something negative.
And not everything would remain positive the entire time. There were some spirits that showed up that were angry. And when these more negative presences were starting to show up in the house, that triggered Carolyn to go out and start to do some research into the house and its former inhabitants to try to figure out what ghosts might be living there.
Yeah, so the story goes, Carolyn went to like a town historian. I think Andrea mentioned his exact name.
We'll get into all of this in the second episode. There's a lot of facts being thrown around. There's a lot of quote-unquote asterisk, in parentheses, not confirmed facts.
All right, hater. So, looking for more information on the house and its ghastly inhabitants, Carolyn decided to investigate the history of the home, headed to the town of Chepachet. Is that right?
Just say this Native American name as white as you possibly can, and that's how it's said.
Headed to the town of Chepachet.
Very good.
To access documents and talk to the region's historian. She said that her research found that the house had a tragic history filled with unexplained and untimely deaths spread across the 8 generations of the family who owned the farm before them.
I don't want to live in the same house that I have to count on my fingers for this, that my great grandpa lived in, farted in, shitted in.
Wow.
Because what if I knock on one of the walls, it crumbles a little bit, then out slides from a hidey hole, like one of his old-timey porn mags where it's just a girl's ankle. I don't want to see that. I don't want to be a part of that.
Jeez. Yeah, it's a really old house. Like, the family lived in there for 8 generations, so you would assume that there are some deaths. But according to Carolyn, these deaths were slightly more unexplained, slightly more tragic than what you would expect.
Over the story, the larger story of the haunting, and there's just too much detail to go into on our show, but over the extended story of this haunting, a lot of these deaths would come up in detail, and she said that there were over a dozen suicides or violent deaths happen in the house, according to Carolyn's investigation of the historical record. We'll just give you a few of the big names here so you can understand some of the story going forward.
She found that a young girl named Prudence Arnold had been murdered in the house. Andrea Perron later said that she was slashed to death by a man named Bill Norden.
Keep that in your back pocket for the second episode.
For sure. She also found that 2 of the Arnolds, John and Susan, took their own lives on the property. John in the house, and Susan hanged in the barn.
There was a barn directly next to the 14-room house.
Mm-hmm. Most notably, there was a murder in the farmhouse, and it would do you well to keep this story in mind, as well as the name. Carolyn said a woman living in the house named Bathsheba Sherman was suspected of killing an infant with a knitting needle. A trial was held, but there was not enough evidence to convict her. Regardless, rumor remained that Bathsheba had killed the child as a sacrifice to the devil, possibly in an attempt to, quote, keep her beauty, end quote.
So Carolyn said she found that the entire town knew that she had done it, even if the courts couldn't find it.
Yeah, this is a very dark, very scary story that it is important to keep in mind as the lore of Bathsheba continues to grow throughout the investigation and plays a big role in the parents' interpretation of their own experiences.
And as more malevolent spirits come into the house, and possibly even demonic ones, they are tied back to Bathsheba. And even her death is surrounded by a strange, possibly demonic occurrence.
For sure. Years later, with age growing on her, Bathsheba reportedly hanged herself in the barn. Town rumor had it that after her death, Bathsheba's body turned into stone.
I'll say, before we make too many judgments about Bathsheba, as important of a crux as she is to this story, hold out until the second episode, when we go into the real Bathsheba from the historical record.
Yeah, so this is what Carolyn herself, like her research said, and how she explained the growingly negative spiritual activity in the house. But it is very important right now to just ride out the 2 episodes with us.
Yeah. Damn it, I was really hoping I'd get that bingo square for take it with a grain of salt from Maddie. So close to the line.
Damn. I mean,
take it with a grain of salt.
Take it with a grain of salt.
Take it with a couple.
Yeah, so like Carolyn is doing this research and she made all these discoveries in response to the growing negative energy they were feeling in the house. So as the parents continued to live in the house, the negative spirits slowly began to grow in strength. The phenomena grew more acute and far darker.
And we're not just talking about like the regular negative, slightly goth atmosphere that they're going to naturally have with a bunch of teenage girls being brought up in the house.
Damn, the natural emo vibes.
Even in the mid-1970s, they're ahead of the curve with that emo stuff.
Honestly. Yeah, but get ready to hear some real bone-chilling accounts.
So, when the third investment cycle for Enron comes on, these are truly chilling accounts of actual company equity versus investment.
What the hell?
Chilling accounts. I thought you wanted...
Never.
One of our listeners, if he ever gets to this episode, will find that joke very inaccurate.
Nice. So in one instance, Carolyn took an orange from the fridge, and when she cut into it, it bled fresh blood.
Oh my god.
One daughter, Cindy, told Andrea that she heard a disembodied voice telling her that 7 bodies were buried in the wall. In the middle of the night, the children's beds would levitate into the air. And another time, a wardrobe was thrown open and Carolyn was struck several times by one of the coat hangers. Additionally, the family would frequently all wake up at 5:15 a.m. and were hit with an overwhelming smell of rotting flesh. These occurrences, growing in strength and regularity, begged the question, what did the entities want? Were they just trying to terrorize the family and Caroline in particular? One morning, they made their aim clear. Okay.
You looked at me?
Yeah, I looked at you.
I have a couple theories about what the ghosts wanted. Would you like to hear them?
Pussy.
Well, I mean, as a general rule, sure. I think the whole orange thing is just keto gone a little bit too far. I really do think that. And I'm going to say 5:15, usually as an affront to the Trinity, people are in haunted houses are woken up at 3:33 a.m. 5:15 just seems like the ghosts are like, early bird catches the worm, get on up.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a typical if you're living on a farm.
If you're on a farm, you wake up at 5:15. That might be a little bit late.
Maybe it's the good spirits are like, let them sleep in a little.
Yeah, 4:30 the sun rises, but 5:15 just give them another few minutes. Originally it was 5, but it got pushed back.
Maybe it's even more terrible because it's like, it's not late enough that you could get like a good amount of sleep. Like 3:33 a.m. you go back to bed.
Oh yeah, you get 2 hours and you're fine. That's a good amount of sleep.
But 5:15 it's like, oh God, might as well get my day started.
Yeah, it's like waking you up at 11:45 and you're like, well, is it even worth sleeping till 1? And then you sleep till 1.
I will say though, kind of in my own personal, maybe paranormal experience, today I woke up at 11 after going to bed at 10:30 p.m. last night. I woke up exactly at like 11:16 and it smelled like trash in the house.
Yeah, it's because I hadn't taken out the trash.
You said you had taken out the trash.
I took out the trash last night.
So I can imagine. So these negative, terrorizing spirits made their aim clear to Carolyn.
We want pussy.
Oh my god. Your neck, your back, your pussy, and your crack.
Just see Andrea fucking just so pissed off in her well-lit den listening to this podcast.
Not at me. Not at me.
I'm pretty sure you said pussy first. And then you just said my neck, my back, my pussy, my crack in like a ghostly voice.
No.
She just crushed a dainty espresso cup in her hand.
In the hours before dawn, Carolyn was startled awake by a voice demanding, quote, "Get out, get out. I'll drive you out with death and gloom," end quote. She shot up and saw a dark figure next to her bed. It was an old woman in a gray dress with her head bent unnaturally to the side. She said her hair looked as though it was just filled with cobwebs.
Frightening.
Scary.
Very scary. I'm pretty sure get out, I'll drive you out with death and gloom is what I heard right before Dead Meadows went on stage at the local venue.
That was effective because they drove your friends out with death and gloom.
I'm so mad at those shitheads. I was like, hey, I'm going to a doom, like a stoner rock sludge show. Do you want to come? And they're like, oh yeah, I love rock music. Yeah, let's go. I'm like, you're probably not going to like it. You should check out their music first. I show up. Each one of them decides to leave one song into the main band set.
Get out. I'll drive you out with death and gloom was actually what I said to Cullen on our first date.
It did not work. Nor did the crying in the club.
I cried in the club on our first date.
She didn't get accepted to a grad school?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck grad school.
Fuck grad school. Fuck University of Utah Mormon ass, lame ass.
If you think she's gonna study for a PhD, you can study this and then she'll moon you.
I'll moon you. So, Carolyn and the rest of the Perron family were understandably overwhelmed and terrified. Their family friend Barbara took matters into her own hands and contacted the Warrens when they were in nearby Connecticut.
Little known fact, Barbara Walters actually took on this case. She was only 68 years old at the time.
Oh, damn.
She dead now?
I don't know.
She died recently?
I only barely have a small, tenuous grip on who the fuck that is.
All I know is in like rap songs released in 1992, they were already pissed off that Barbara Walters was like the worst, most white and well-off reporter in the U.S.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think it was Barbara Walters, I'm gonna be honest.
We don't have to have every single detail in this story. It could be Barbara Walters. We could add in lies.
Technically it could be, because I don't remember. And when I don't remember things, I just make up facts.
Mandela effect. It was Barbara Walters that...
Holy shit. I thought it was their family friend, Barbara.
Oh no.
I was just spending this whole time trying to think of another Barbara, but I really couldn't.
Bush, I think.
Oh, wow.
A lot of strong, annoying white women.
Do better.
Barbara's out there, do better.
Do
or
better.
Were you saying that to me?
Yeah, you could do. But white women do better challenge. Oh my gosh.
TikTok challenge, white women do better.
Okay, so this is the second TikTok challenge I've came up with. The first TikTok challenge was Jesus Take the Wheel challenge.
You want to be telling your parents this. And the insurance company.
Sponsored by State Farm. So you are on the freeway and you listen to Jesus Take the Wheel, and every time she says, Jesus take the wheel, you lay your hands off the wheel.
Yeah.
And it's like a challenge how long you can keep your hands off the wheel.
Yeah. And you get bonus points if your boyfriend pisses in his car seat.
You're in a car seat?
No, I'm in a regular car seat. I'm not in a booster seat that a baby would be in.
Your boyfriend pisses in his booster.
This entire episode's getting cut. We're only gonna have part 2 where we talk about how none of this is real. That's the only episode that's getting real. We're skipping from 9 to 11, and then I'll chuckle in the comments of our own podcast.
Oh God. The next episode isn't debunking. It's just our theories and, elucidating some of the facts that might have got mixed up.
we're not debunking in the next episode. We're just telling you the truth, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, so their family friend, presumably white woman Barbara, took matters into her own hands and contacted the Warrens when they were nearby. After the friend told the Perron's story, the Warrens immediately decided to look into the case and made several trips to the house to investigate. As opposed to the Conjuring movie, they didn't stay in the Perron house.
Just weren't enough of the 14 rooms for them.
Damn. Each girl gets 2 rooms.
Technically, they deserve, at least Ed, as a pig, deserved to stay in the barn.
Nice. So, quickly, for those who do not know, who are the Warrens? Ed and Lorraine Warren were a famous paranormal investigation duo that claimed to have investigated over 10,000 cases. Ed was a self-taught demonologist, and Lorraine was a clairvoyant and light trance medium. You'll see also very important in their lore, they were devout Catholics.
Yeah, so Lorraine was a light trance medium, and then Ed was a misogynistic large.
Yeah, I gotta say, believe victims. Ed was a pedophile.
Is that true?
Well, his mistress was underage.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, there we go.
So the duo is that, like, Ed was a demonologist. He, like, studied demons. They were both very religious. And Lorraine had kind of, like, psychic powers. So they worked together on many cases, many very famous cases, such as the Amityville Horror, the Annabelle the Doll case, and the, quote, devil made me do it, unquote case, aka the trial of Arnie Cheyenne Johnson. The couple also founded the New England Society for Psychic Research. So, the most famous paranormal investigators, especially of the time. They were very active in the 70s.
Most famous, I would argue, because of the movies that they helped create.
That's true.
Not exactly, as I'm sure our growing audience will resonate, not exactly the most beloved or respected in the paranormal world.
Yeah, they were extremely famous because they worked on very high-profile cases and
cases that they made very high profile by releasing notes and books and movies.
Yeah, and in some cases they, like the Enfield poltergeist, they like inserted themselves and the family was like, please no.
Please get out of here.
Yeah, that's what the Conjuring universe is based off of, the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Exactly right.
So they were told the story of what the parents had been going through, and they just immediately knew they needed to investigate this. Carolyn herself was very excited about the Warrens' involvement. And of course, they were already very high profile back then and close by in Connecticut. But, you know, Carolyn really didn't want to reach out for help because she felt like no one would believe her. So at this point, she's just really glad that someone is listening to her and believing her story. Roger was ever the quintessential horror movie father.
A role that I hope to continue to grow into over the next few years.
Oh, yeah. Cullen is absolutely ready to be the horror movie father.
What was that sound? I'm gonna go look directly at it.
I'm gonna shoot it with my gun. Did they do that?
Man. You know what I promised never to do? Listen to my wife or children.
He swears by it. Mm-hmm. And I love it. I'm like, oh my God, did you hear that? And he turned to me, like, looked me dead in the eyes. I'm like, you crazy bitch. Well, I love it, I said. Yeah. Yeah, so Roger, like we said, is very typical of any real haunted story and horror movie. He didn't experience as many of the things as his daughters and his wife. And also, generally, he wasn't happy that the Warrens were involved because he didn't really want to get anyone else involved in this.
Yeah, join me in the second episode where I argue that he had a good head on his shoulders.
So, the Warrens began their investigation by interviewing everyone in the house about their experiences. The Warrens typically kept meticulous notes to put in their extensive Warren case files, so a majority of their investigation here, and most investigations they did, were filmed and recorded.
Yeah, they were famous for taking photographs and having video camera footage of stuff that was going on.
Little fun fact is that Ed Warren really thought this case had a lot of, could be a good movie. It was like, if any of our cases would be a movie, it'd be this one. And Lorraine actually is still kind of scared to talk about it. Well, she recently passed away. But this case definitely had a big impact on them. So I think that's interesting.
Though she was quite involved in the making of the movie, from what I've heard.
Yeah, and so were the Perron children, which is interesting. Yeah, so they began their investigation. They interviewed like everyone living in the house for their story. They were videotaping, just kind of seeing what's going on. They kind of go about their investigations like trying to help. Their main goal is to rid a house of any negative spirits. So they're very Catholic, and Ed was a demonologist. So if they believed there were any demons, the goal was to exorcise them for the house. Something that I feel like can come with some confusion, and especially in the movie, it is seen that Ed and Lorraine do an exorcism, but that is not true. Ed never performed exorcisms. In this case, one of their first steps was to go to a priest, or I think it has to be approved by a bishop, to get the house exorcised. But that is not something they did, and I don't think it ever was eventually exorcised.
Yeah, instead of how it went in the movie where it climaxed with an exorcism, we'll talk in a minute about the seance instead that actually happened.
Yeah, and so the Warrens, as investigators, what they were aiming to do, like most of the investigations, they're getting the story and they're trying to find the root cause of what is happening. So we'll see in a second that they are going over Carolyn's research with her. And Lorraine Warren, as a clairvoyant or a medium, will go through the house and see if she, what she learns from any spirits. So they are investigating the house. Lorraine is kind of contacting these spirits, and among all of the spirits found in the house, Bathsheba would emerge as the most dangerous and violent.
This realization started to come with their interview of Carolyn.
Like Cullen said, this came from the Warrens when Carolyn told them about an experience she had before they arrived. Carolyn said that she was laying on the couch when she was suddenly hit with a sharp stabbing pain in her calf. When she looked, nothing had touched her, but there was a small, circular hole impressed in her skin that was starting to bleed. So the Warrens connected that she must have been stabbed by Bathsheba's knitting needle, which she used to sacrifice the infant and carried into the afterlife. So the rumor went, obviously, that she stabbed this infant in the head with a knitting needle, but the rumor also goes that she, was buried with the needle.
It seems like a weird thing for them to throw in the casket with her.
That's fair.
They did say that she did turn to stone, so if she was somehow holding the knitting needle when she hanged herself, seems difficult, but maybe.
Yeah, that's just the lore, I guess, whether she was buried with it or she was just loved it.
Yeah. She just snuck into her old house after she turned into a ghost and grabbed it.
Yeah, she's like, oh, my favorite knitting needle.
Oh, this thing's so good. It's worn in all the right place. I could go loop, stitch, loop so quick with this fucker.
So from there forward, the Warrens refer to the main spirit in the house by the name Bathsheba. This is definitely something we will cover extensively in the second episode, where we kind of look at if there are any history that may have been rewritten. At this point, its name is Bathsheba. That's just what they called it. Whether it really was the spirit of Bathsheba Sherman, we're not sure yet.
Yeah, and per Ed being a demonologist, he seemed to think that Bathsheba and her, sacrifices to the devil could have drawn demons into the house, or a demonic spirit that was causing some of the damage.
Yeah, for sure. In addition to the rumor that she has this satanic background, which quite clearly would draw some demonic energy, Carolyn herself felt very attacked, and I think the Warrens were putting together that this spirit, Bathsheba, this demonic entity, felt like she was the mistress of the house, and seeing Caroline, it was kind of like, well, that's my territory, in a way.
And I'll say, as far as them identifying Bathsheba as, trying to take over that role, or just as the main aggressor in the house in general, risky strategy, because yes, you get the upside. If you're calling Bathsheba by name, she's going to be taken aback by that. Because it's like the same thing as going on 4chan and being like, James, you really should be nicer to your mom. Because there's going to be one guy on there who's like, wow, I can't believe I really should. I shouldn't just be giving her the people's elbow all the time.
Oh my god.
But you get the name wrong, you just piss off the spirit or demon even more to fuck up who it is.
Yeah.
And that's like a 1 in 20 or so guess too, because there's a ton of spirits in the house.
I think it is very important from the lore I've seen to really know the demon's name. And I think that's a part of either the nun or one of the other conjurings, is when you find out a demon's name that like takes some of its power, which is a lore I really like and think is interesting.
It is, but I think also if we're approaching from the other angle, if they were incorrect that it was a demon in the house and it actually was malevolent spirits, a lot of the time, and the Enfield case is a great example, interacting directly with or talking directly to malevolent spirits can make phenomenon much worse because you're sort of validating their presence and drawing them further into the corporeal world from their disconnected afterlife.
Yeah, the Warrens were very well intentioned. As we've said before, their goal was to help people rid their houses of demonic entities. However, it is highly reported that when the Warrens began their investigation, paranormal activity in the house actually got way worse. And this is leading to our climax and to the moment that really everyone was the most terrified.
Right. But as they continued, in addition to finding out what they hope was actually Bathsheba's name and the demonic presences, Lorraine helped uncover a couple more things that she had been told about through Carolyn's research.
Yeah, so during her psychic investigation, one of the things Lorraine Warren also discovered was that little Prudence Arnold had been murdered in the pantry of the house. Lorraine said she could see the pantry covered in blood. The Warrens boarded up the pantry and told the family never to step foot inside again. I need that Warren diet plan.
Yeah, honestly. I think there's an alternate theory to what happened with the whole pantry thing. Maybe Roger and Carolyn just got a little bit too wild with one of those Trader Joe's Boxo wines.
It's easy to happen.
Entire pantry splattered with $9.99 on sale red wine. Never go inside again because you don't need your 5 daughters seeing you a bottle and a half deep talking about what happened in high school and who was out with who and did you go to the prom with her?
That's shameful.
It's shameful. Yeah, you don't want them seeing that.
Yeah, so as we stated earlier, the parents claimed that the presence and investigation of the Warrens actually made paranormal activity in the house worse. And one of the more insidious aspects that was covered in the Conjuring movie was the hide and clap game, which is one of the instances where the parents and the Warrens said that in real life, it was actually much worse and much more scary. So from what I gather, the girls would play a game that's like hide and seek meets Marco Polo. So people would hide and then clap to get the attention to kind of like lead them in the way and then just keep trying to hide. And I believe in the movie and what they're saying happened in real life is maybe they were all together or you were alone in the house and you would just hear clapping. And it was just very spooky, very ominous because the clapping would be coming from no one. So it's just the spirits playing these games with them.
And that's one of many hints that the spirits in the house were of Caucasian people. Because they'll clap all the time for almost anything.
Oh, yeah. Applaud.
Our white bread suburban neighbors often come outside the house to clap at the Amazon delivery guy while he drops stuff off in the mailbox.
It's respectful.
It's nice. Instead, just leave a little bit of feedback on the app. I think it does get back to them.
Now, here's a funny thing. What if it was cheeks being clapped? You know?
We workshopped this bit for a while. Didn't really get it anywhere further than that, but what if their cheeks were the ones that were clapping?
Yeah.
You know what? This is going to be like a audience interaction part. You take that and run with it. You take that and like turn it into like a goof for yourself.
Workshop this for us, please. Here's one of my ideas. It's like from a lyric, actually. It's like they would hear ghostly clapping, but the ghosts were not applauding.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to reference the far more popular hit song from the Big Rover Experience. I'm clapping cheeks tonight. I'm clapping cheeks tonight. Fucking song slaps. That fucking song claps.
Oh my god. Yeah, so as we've been building up to, the Warrens' investigation came to a head when they attempted a seance to contact and ward off the negative spirits in the house. As we stated, it gets a little fuddled in the movie. The Warrens did arrange an exorcism from a priest, but that has not happened yet, and this was not meant to be an exorcism. This was meant to be a seance, so the Warrens helping the parents contact the spirits and kind of say just like, fuck off, dude.
Honestly, get the hell out of here. Come on.
No one wants you here.
And the ghost did make a good retort where it's like, does any family with 5 children need 14 rooms?
Yeah.
And that's a fair question, but that doesn't mean that the ghost just get to move in rent free. This was a debate that sort of went on for a little while.
Landlord versus ghosts, power hour.
It is interesting though that after the event, there's some disagreement about A, the effectivity, and B, like the actual validity of the process, I would say. Andrea, the eldest daughter, who said that she secretly watched the seance, she would probably say that The Conjuring, that the name of the movie refers to, would be the Warrens accidentally conjuring a spirit or a demon up into the house.
Yeah, they really said like the Warrens' presence, and it could be because of like Lorraine's psychic energy made things worse and scarier. And I get that. In this case, in performing a seance, the point is to like contact the spirits. So it's not like they could just like use a broom and like shove the spirits all like, get out of here. They had to like...
That's a good idea though.
Yeah. There wasn't a way that the Warrens were capable of, it seemed, to kick the spirits out without like addressing them first. Like,
But
are you trying to address me?
In hindsight, they should have used a magical broom. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's how we get the dog out of our room. So in the seance that happened actually in the dining room and not in the basement, as the movie states, they ended up making contact with some sort of spirit or possibly a demonic presence, but it didn't all go smoothly.
At this point during the seance, and maybe even a little before, it's slightly unclear, Carolyn said herself that she had been possessed by Bathsheba. So during the seance, Carolyn began speaking in tongues, or as other witnesses say, many strange languages. Her chair levitated and she was thrown into the parlor. None of the witnesses have gone into extensive detail about the event, and Andrea stated that it was the only time she was truly terrified.
And there were a lot of people there that would have witnessed what was going on, because you had Roger, the husband, Carolyn, obviously. You had both Ed and Lorraine Warren. And they also, according to Andrea, brought in a crew to help document it, to help film it and take photographs. And in addition to that, 2 of the daughters, Andrea and one of her sisters, ended up secretly watching the seance, they said.
Yeah, and as Andrea, as a child, witnessed this, she said that obviously this was the scariest point. She didn't know what was going on with her mom. And Lorraine Warren herself says she does not like to remember it. It had a huge impact with her, and she also, it's just too terrifying to recall.
Absolutely. And it seems that that connection that they made between Carolyn and the spirits or whatever was in the house, that accidental tie together, would continue on for a little while.
Yeah, unfortunately for the Perron family, while the seance was the climax and the worst it ever got, it never really got better. The Warrens were unsuccessful in ridding the house of the negative spirits.
It wasn't the tidy movie that it ended up turning into, where it reaches this climax and they're able to somehow like defeat the spirit through an exorcism or a seance. It seemed to only make things worse. And immediately afterwards, Rogers put his foot down and kicked the Warrens straight out of the house out of concern for his wife's mental stability.
Yeah, he didn't want them to have any more involvement. And I think I've seen an exact quote. He told them to get the hell out.
That's what they were trying to do.
Nice.
It took her a couple of seconds.
It really did.
The question is, will I cut that pause while she thought through what I said out of the episode?
Depends. It's so natural. Yeah, so as we've alluded to, the Perron family would continue living in the Arnold estate for some time after the Warrens left, with negative paranormal experiences seeming to come and go. I mean, it's like my depression. It waxes and it wanes.
It waxes. It's like the moon in the sky.
Oh, yeah. For a time, Carolyn Perron seemed to be slipping away from the family. She would later say she felt like she was slipping into the house. Haunting of Hill House vibes by Shirley Jackson.
And Andrea would also say that the physical state of her mom would continue to decline for some time. Like she was losing weight and looking more haggard and honestly looking more ghostly.
Mm-hmm.
Funnily enough, some of the people in the house, I think mostly Carolyn, but it has been somewhat attributed to the daughters as well, would start like dressing in 18th century style clothing.
What?
Yeah, I read that in a couple of places that they would start like dressing in that fashion. I understand Roger's stance on this one. It's like, okay, so you're terrified of the house and it's sort of taking everything over. So I saw that you had a custom dress made that's like that has like 34 buttons all along the front and like one of those fluffy hats that they used to wear and a giant petticoat. Seems like you're kind of leaning into the, you're sort of yes-anding the ghosts on this one.
When in Rome.
When in a haunted house, dressed like a ghost. When in Rome, egg the Pope.
Damn, I saw the Pope speak. It was euphoric.
That's fun. Did he
it
talk
was
in
my
English?
pilgrimage.
Was it?
Yeah. I can't remember, but I don't think he spoke in English. I really don't think so, no.
Did he speak in that fancy, dumb language that they have?
Italian?
Yeah.
Exactly. Man, Europe is scary.
Why is that frightening?
Okay, well,
You're just sitting around a campfire and you have a flashlight under your chin, and it goes, deep in the mountains behind the Alps in Europe. There's a place where they speak a language even gayer than French.
Are you allowed to say that? So Carolyn said that a turning point came one night when she saw a family of apparitions having dinner in the dining room, and they all turned nervously to look at her and whispered sheepishly among themselves, "The ghost is back." Holy shit, The Others vibes. Featuring Nicole Kidman.
Yeah. This story is from Andrea and presumably in her trilogy of books that we have not read yet, and I'm not going to make any promises. She was the one who gave this story from Mother Carol and sort of falling into the house and coming to that realization that she was sort of becoming entwined in the odd time loop that happens inside of a haunted house and becoming like her spirit was getting tied to the house the same way that the other spirits were.
Yeah, and this is something that has been described in other haunted house stories, like real life accounts, as well as a lot of fiction, like huge Haunting of Hill House vibes, both the show and the book. And it's very interesting because Carolyn just continuing to live in this house was taking a huge toll on her and her spirit. So the family would stay in the house until 1980, having spent nearly a decade inside.
Long time.
According to Andrea, her mother Caroline forced the decision, finally, telling her husband that she didn't believe she could survive another winter in the house, which is very 1800s-esque.
But that also could have just been because the house was from like 1738 and they didn't have double pane windows, and that becomes miserable at a certain point. I mean, our house stayed at a solid, 72 the entire time, and you would just huddle in bed all day, shivering, asking for the dog to come up and warm you up.
Bullshit. We didn't turn on the heat at all this winter.
We live in Tucson, Arizona.
Don't tell them our address. So with that, Carolyn finally putting her foot down, yes, queen, the family left the Arnold estate, and with it nearly all of the haunting activity.
Nearly.
The family experienced a few strange things in the following years, but much less activity.
One strange event actually came somewhat tied to the Warrens again. According to Andrea, and this isn't really backed up by anyone else, so, mark it off your bingo sheet, but I'm saying it, take it with a grain of salt.
That's my catchphrase that you took.
Here's 25 cents for the royalties.
Thank you.
They said that Carolyn was contacted by Lorraine Warren afterwards, and Lorraine was already coming up with the idea to turn the case files for their haunting into a book or into a movie, and offered her a serious amount of money to release the story. Carolyn was originally against the idea, but Lorraine convinced her to sit on it and sort of mull it over. But that night, Carolyn said that when she went to go do the laundry in their new house, out of nowhere, the heavy basement door fell off of its hinges freakishly and landed on her. She said that she called Lorraine Warren back the next day and said that she absolutely wouldn't be doing any movie or book deal.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't. It seems pretty clear that something really did attach to Carolyn, and she obviously got the worst of it during her time. But it's very interesting because over the following years, the family would look back on their time in the house with a mix of fear and nostalgia as well.
The mother somewhat too had odd positive feelings towards the house.
Yeah, and Andrea said despite what happened in the house, the family had some of its best times inside, and many of them didn't even want to leave. That's something Andrea will still visit the house to this day, say it feels like her home. And you know, nostalgia is very powerful too for like children.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's why we have Disney Plus.
Oof.
Oof.
Oof. I mean, even after James delivered a people's elbow from the top of the kitchen table, that honestly, I'm pretty sure it split one of the discs in my back. And I haven't confirmed that with a doctor, but some of these mornings, I swear, you know what? At the end of the day, he was my roommate, and I wish that he hadn't shot up that bank.
Oh, no. Yeah, obviously the story got out, but it seems like it was on the Perron family's own terms. As we stated before, Andrea wrote a trilogy about her time in the house, and Carolyn has since passed, I believe.
But she did sign off on the books being made, oddly.
Yeah, and it seems like the children may have changed their mind because, you know, obviously Warner Brothers has...
Well, New Line Cinema, the studio, put out The Conjuring.
Yeah, which the Warrens and the Perrons were actually a part of. So, though the Perrons managed to escape the Arnold estate, the house was not destroyed and it never was cleansed or exorcised. Join us in our next episode because the story of this haunted house is much bigger than just the Perron family.
It is still standing today. It has a much longer tale to tell, spanning across several other groups that would live in the house.
Yeah.
That episode will come out in 2 weeks. We'll talk about the next people who would come to live in the house, what they said that they experienced, and we'll also look at some of the history we and other people have been able to dig up about the previous tenants of the house and the entire surrounding area, which, even for the yawn of Rhode Island, pretty spooky.
Yeah, and as the case grows into high profile as it is, and kind of a Hollywood direction, obviously things change and a lot of things get dug up, and there are people who have very intense feelings about the Perrons, about the story, and what effect that the story coming to the popular culture had on their lives.
For those of you who have been listening to the show for a while, you know we like to go into theories and dissect what might or might not have happened. Mm-hmm. You'll be getting a whole episode of it in 2 weeks.
Yeah. As haunted as I believe the house to be, there are a lot of important inconsistencies in their story that may surprise you.
Absolutely. Very good.
Dramatic.
Oh, dramatic.
It's dramatic.
We're being dramatic about it.
We're reeling you in.
Man, I hope I get invited to a ghost frat party. Like, I've been thinking about that's been stuck in my head all episode. Like, I don't want to have to rush infanticide or anything. I haven't really gotten along with any people from a frat or sorority I've met before.
Sure.
But I just want to go to a sick ghost party.
Ghost parties are cool. Frat parties suck. How about my idea of a dip party?
A dip party, I don't want to have to clean up the bowls. I cannot handle 14 bowls of half-eaten dip. It makes me want to fucking vomit.
Well, you know, I'm glad that our listeners are here for the ride as we're just getting more and more adventurous with our podcast. This is our first step, making a 2-parter, and I promise you we have big things in our future, including our own investigations.
Our submission to make this a real semi-nonfiction podcast is halfway done and it will be complete. We will have ascended to a true podcast when our second episode comes out. So stick around, tell your friends, tell your wife, tell your secret husband, because we're coming back.
Tell your wife. Tell your wife's boyfriend.
Oh
we're
my God.
getting real, and you should be excited for us.
Believe in a big ass party house full of ghosts and
Hell yeah.
going crazy trying to clean it all up before the even older ghosts come home from at the store or
Oh
at
my
the movies or something.
God.
And believe in yourself.
Believe in the demonic haunting of the Perron family. What?
They always go dark with it. Last episode was brutal.
Last episode, my dad texted me. He's like, "Are you okay?" Believe in the demonic presences in the Perron house. Believe that the truth is out there, and believe in yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Enjoy this party mix of our theme song that I had to make for the intro.